Hey everyone, welcome to another Vampires vs Aliens devlog. Today we have some pretty cool new feature and a little bit of update about how all of that works for those who are interested. And yeah, a little update on progress. So the big thing since last devlog has been previews. So now when you go to level up a skill, when you level up and you plan to take a skill, your options for active and support, you'll now have an option for preview. It's a little hard to click at the moment, something you're going to fix later. But when you go to preview, you see the entire skill tree of that skill. This is for all active skills and also for all support skills. When you see it, you can say, hey, is this a skill that I want to take? Is this got the attributes that I want? I don't know. Now you don't need to memorize all of that information. You'll be able to just see it. There is still a known bug with this, which is that, of course, it shows the entire player UI while you're doing it. That is something I need to figure out. But the preview itself is working. Now, this may not seem like the biggest, most important feature update, but I can assure you that I think this is really important for usability. We're going to have a lot of skill trees, and asking players to just remember what everything does is going to be a pain. Having to write code to generate a preview every single time would have been a pain, right? I still wanted to make sure that you would be able to still search, right? So if I type in damage, I can still see damage. If I type in cooldown, I can still get cooldowns. Having to write or generate two separate things for every skill where it generates the preview and generates the actual skill differently would have doubled the work we need to do. So having this work is really important, and getting it to work was a huge pain, especially for support skills which need to be connected to an active skill. I also needed to make sure you couldn't actually take these skills and it didn't apply itself. So there was a bunch of tricky things to get this to work. That, as well as there being PAX here in Australia, meant that I haven't really got a lot else to show. This has taken multiple days of works just to get the support skills working, but it is working. And I'm pretty happy with that. So that is where we are with that. The next and probably final main new skill feature that we've done is tooltips. Now this is actually still in progress, so really what I'm showing you here is a preview. But the way it's going to work is when you're in the passive tree, you'll have a bunch of stats on the right. When you hover them, it'll be able to tell you exactly how they function. So for example, critical chance will say, hey, this is the chance of you dealing critical damage. It can stack over 100%. If you crit multiple times, it applies that damage multiple times, right? Something like that. So all of these really precise details for the players that care about it will be in the game, but for everyone who doesn't care about it, they'll just be able to hit the high details button and forget about it. So that's going to be in there. This functionality is all working really good. I'm really happy with it. Really, the only step here that's left is to write out all of the descriptions and put all of the stats in. But if there's a stat that we're using in the game, we are going to show that. That's movement speed, that's attack speed, or skill cooldown rather. That's projectile count, pierce count, damage, critical chance, critical damage, critical chance. Yeah, I said both of those. Attack size, projectile speed, everything. It's all going to be there for every single skill. May need to put in a scroll bar at some size. We'll see how we go with that. So those are the two big features from last devlog. I know that's not super exciting, but I think it's really important to get these usability things done now before we start doing things like adding in 100 skills and then asking our players to just either look up a wiki or look up some online guide that we've written that says, here's all of the passive nodes for this skill. Better to have it all in the game. The search, as I did show you, does work in the preview as well as here, so that's also really important. That's it in terms of the actual code. It's in terms of the actual features. Next week, we're hoping we'll have tooltips finished, and we'll see what's next. I think I still have the intent to do meta progression as part of the 0.4 release, so I think that's probably what I'm going to start working on next, but it may end up being things like more interesting enemies or just new actives and support skills. We'll kind of see what we think is needed. For the meta progression stuff, we're not expecting to start adding a ton of characters until November, so don't expect to necessarily see like how the gacha banner stuff is going to work and all of that. until that date. Right now, it's just the one character we have here, which still needs some work anyway. So that'll come later. But hopefully, we're looking for 0.4. Certainly this year, I'm hoping about 2 months out from now. We'll see how we go. I'm hoping about a month and a half. Around December is where I expect 0.4 to go out. In that version, we expect to have a few more abilities, hopefully some form of meta progression, and maybe some more interesting enemy design. So that's it from the feature update. For those interested, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the code. This will be a bit rambly, but if you are interested in this section, feel free to stay tuned in. So the big question with preview trees is, how do we make it so that we can display all of the passive nodes, have all of the tooltips work, and as well as have them searchable without actually picking the skill. Now, option 1 would be to do something like duplicating all of the stuff. So, you say, here's where the passive tree is, here's what the preview passive tree is, and then we manually code all that. A second option would be to duplicate that via code, which we sort of have done, but instead of having the skill have a preview and a normal version, we just generate a fake version of the skill, and then we just don't apply it, and we block off interaction. So that's kind of what I'm going to show you here. Now, I spent days, particularly on the support skill, trying to get this to work. In part, I ran into some actual Godot bugs. So the Godot bugs do exist, in case anyone was wondering, and it tripped me up for a few hours, so that added a bit of a delay to that, but anyway, that's the more we learn. So, when a player goes to preview a skill, and they hit that button, we'll get a skill name, so that'll be like multiple projectiles, or hemoport or whatever, and we need to do a few things. First, we need to generate a version of it to preview. We need to start enabling the passive tree, right? So this is all to set up the passive tree, and we need to add the child. Now, it's important that we later come back and then clean this thing up. So you'll see that this current preview skill, right, is not a var declaration. There's no var here. This is a tracked variable, which means later we come back and we queue free it, and we remove it as a child. This is to, make sure we're not building as players click preview like 100 times over the course of a game. There's not 100 skills that are just sitting there doing nothing. So that's why we have to track them and make sure we're properly cleaning it up. Once we have the skill, we go through either 2 lines. We either add active, or we go through a specific line for support skills. Now, the reason we need to do 2 different things here is the active skill pathway is pretty similar to how we do a normal one. There's no complexity to it because it doesn't need to join to anything. With the support skill, we need to do a bit more. So if you go into the passive tree, you'll see that there's an option now for, is this a, where is it? Preview. Oh, right, staring right at me. This is preview function. This is an export variable, and that's because the player actually has 2 skill trees. It has the preview passive tree, and then it has the actual passive tree. So this tree needs to be told, are you a preview or are you not? And there's a bunch of things that it'll do differently if it is a preview. Like, it won't show how many passive points because they don't matter. At the moment, it's not showing those extra character details. I do plan to probably show them at some point, but I just need to think a little bit about how to do that. That's probably a feature that I'll wait maybe even to 0.5 to do, because you kind of want it to show the player adjusted stats that are relevant. It might require some finagling. So for now, just to make it easier, I'm hiding that. But the search button is visible in both cases. A few other things that happen if it's preview. This is when we close the tree. That doesn't matter. You'll see here we have a bit more cleanup here when we close it. So here we have the preview support skill. So this is that separate line of separate pathway that I mentioned before. This fake tree here, when we look at the passive tree, you'll see we have the trees, and under the trees a fake tree. So this is, whether the tree is a preview tree or not, it has an object called a fake tree, which is sort of like a fake active skill that support skills can connect to. We need that because a support skill is expecting that. Now, I could have probably figured out another way to do this. This is how my initial approach was to show, hey, it will slot into an empty slot. That empty slot will connect to an active skill. I think it's better to show that connection, but I could be convinced that it's better to hide it. But it's very important that the player sees which direction the support skill is working from. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go into this passive tree and apply a support, this connection here between player damage and this trigger, this little connection here, it matters a lot. Because when you're looking at this skill tree, are you connecting in here? Are you connecting in here? Are you connecting in here? Are you connecting at a weird angle? Right? That is a relevant question for the player. Now, this might seem really obvious, but it's something, you know, a little less obvious with this skill. Are you connecting into here? Are you connecting into here? Are you connecting into here? By doing it, by having that fake active skill, when we click something like multiple projectiles, it's very clear what direction it's coming from, not just because we read top to bottom or bottom to top, but because we actually have something here that says this is the pretend active skill slot, and you can see that it is connecting up this way. So hopefully that will provide a nice visual indicator for that. So that's why we have this whole fake tree thing. We then need to slot it into that fake tree. We need to make sure we're not applying it. So we actually have to tell the skill itself, your preview, don't apply it. So when we do that, we make sure you're not accidentally getting multiple projectiles every time you hit preview on that skill. And then lastly, we need to set the tree to the fake tree. So this code is never going to run for a real passive tree, so maybe this could have been two separate classes, but for now I've just handled it in the one. The search bar will still work. One thing to note about this is probably the last really relevant thing I'll talk about for this video today. We have this function here. Rather than going through every object and saying, hey, you're a preview, don't be selectable, hey, you're a preview, don't be selectable, don't highlight, just ignore the player input, right? It seemed like the passive nodes don't really need to know if they're a preview or not. It doesn't seem like relevant information. They only need to worry if they're connected, and if they're connected, they should be takenable. I could just have said nothing is connected, but then that might break some other things. That might break some of the drawing. I wasn't 100% sure. The easiest thing to do is to just eat the input. So we simply say, if this is visible, if the event is a mouse event, if that a mouse event is a left click, we tell it to hide the... Oh, that's not the right button. That's not the right bit. Here it is. If the event is mouse input, and it's a left click, and it's visible, and it's a preview, this is probably the most relevant part. We don't want to disable player input on the normal tree. We only want to disable it on the preview tree. We then set input as handled. So what this does is it gets the viewport and says, this left click, just eat it. Don't do anything with it. So when you say click a passive skill, even if it's connected right to the core, even if you have the passive points, because it's in the preview, it's saying don't do anything with that input. Don't tell the passive node that it's been clicked. Just don't show it. And it's only doing this for left clicks. So you can still scroll around. You still get the tooltips from hovering. You still get all your other inputs, but that'll be hidden. Now, we will need to potentially adjust this to also make sure it works when... So right now, you'll see that if we're hovering over the search button, right, it'll let me click even though it's eating inputs. Let me show you that very quickly. When we hover this search button, it will actually let me type things. So I can type damage. But I had to click that search box to type it. We don't want to eat the input. So it's actually tracking if the mouse is over that when the player clicks. So similarly, if we had the details panel here, we're going to need to track if it's over that button, and if it is, allow for clicking, because you should be allowed to click that button. We just need to stop you from clicking these skills. Cool. Just a little bug test there. If I hover the search over this, can I take it? No, it's still not passing that input through. That's good. That's what we want to see. So that's about it for this devlog. I know it's not a lot of super exciting stuff, but I think it's really important to get the stuff right, and I'm exceedingly happy that these previews are working, because I think from a player perspective, being able to see ahead of time, is this a skill that I want? I don't really like this passive tree. Is this a skill that I want? I kind of like this passive tree. It's got easy access to cooldown. It has a really strong node here. Yeah, I'll pick that up. That's the kind of player loop we're going for, and I think the previews will go a long way with that. So thanks for watching today's devlog, and I hope you have a good day.